So here we have a 3D model of our chapter house. So what we do is we take the entire building here and we model it for the individual stones in each placement. You can kind of consider it as the shop drawings for the actual carving of the stone. It's just all digitized. It's all 3D in a 3D model. It's one of the really handy things of modern technology is we can actually put everything together, know precisely how it will all work. So what we do here is you can see we take the entire building and we cut it all up. So you can see all the mortar joints here, every single individual block and stone, the foliated pieces, all the foliations from the carvers, from the artist. Everything is kind of all put together and integrated with our architectural plans, the structure that's there. Everything kind of ties together here. And so then what we'll do is we can take any one of these stones here. Every single one has a name. Every single one goes to a very particular spot in the building. So for example, the stones, every single one of these, this is stone 538. Each one has its own particular name, and whenever we go to actually install the stone, they know exactly where that piece goes on the building. So then what I can do is we will take one of these pieces that we'll carve into something, and we will actually export it out of this program, and I can give that 3D model, because it is already a 3D model, directly to the programmers, those who actually program the CNCs to carve each piece. Because it's already all set up that way, they can just take that and use that model to precisely replicate it in the stone. So now here we are looking at the chapter house. Today we're going to carve the finial here at the top of the pinnacle, this pillar, this pointy object here on the front left side of the chapter house. So we're going to go through the entire process from the design by the artist all the way through the programmer and to the actual when we finally carve this piece.
Praise be Jesus Christ. I'm one of the lay brothers here at the monastery. I'm going to be going through with you how I design some of the ornamental foliated pieces that go on the architecture. What we have here is pinnacle. At the bottom, I made a smaller finial, and we're going to show you how to how we went about going and creating the top, the very top of this pinnacle. There's crockets crawling all the way up to the very peak, to the piece where we're going to be working on. I'll just start with a ball. It's like a piece of digital clay, and I'll just play around. I got different tools. I'll usually, for a crocket, I'll use the grab tool, and I'll just try to like start the movement of a crocket, and I'll kind of break it out, and so it's like something that would protrude from the finial. I'll try to make a basic, like what I'm shooting for is a budding leaf in spring, where it's coming up out of the ground or off the stem, and it's just before the leaves pop out, and that's what I'm shooting for. And I'll try to get, once I have leaves made, I'll use different tools to dig in there and get some definition, so that, because everything needs to be a little bit dramatized in stone, so that it'll catch light, because that's most of that's what looks good in the end with carving, is having, so there's contrast between light and dark. There's a bit of undercutting happening between the leaves. I'll have a finished crocket, and it'll look something like this, and then I'll work on placing it onto the actual piece of architecture. Here, and I'll start slapping them on there, and I'll drag them around and try to get the movement like it's growing out of the piece. And so you can see it's like it's springing to life. It's trying to make the stone look like it's alive, like it has movement. So I'll do a couple layers. of crockets, and then at the end here I'll put the very top, I'll have like a bud where it looks like if you go out in spring you'll see these leaves popping up out of the ground, or these plants popping up out of the ground, and it's like they're formed together and then they're kind of peeling back, and that's what I'm shooting for with this, so it just gives the stone, makes it look like it has life.
Alright, so now we have the finial ready, so piece 561 right here at the very top of this pinnacle. So the artist has finished designing it, we've got it put in the model here, and so now if you look closely, this is the piece that we're ready to send off to the programmers. And it's basically the very, very tip here. You can see that piece. And we're going to go ahead and get it programmed and get it carved.
Praise be Jesus Christ. Today we're going to be carving a finial for the chapter house. So basically we have a 3D model here that was designed by one of our monks. And so we bring it into this program, which is called Pegasus. And it's basically the program where you can carve by programming a CNC machine. So really this is going to be carved by a CNC, and we're just doing all the programming in this program. So basically it starts off as a stone block. You can see here this kind of white lines will show the outline of that initial block, that ultimately we need to remove all that material and get this final finished, polished finial.
Hey, so I'm one of the Sawyer monks that runs the bridge stock here. So we got a little slab here that we're about to use to cut a block out of to use as a block for the finial to run on the CNCs. It's going to be the piece that goes on top of the pinnacles on the chapter house.
So what I'm going to do now is just simulate here and kind of show you the process step by step. So here's the CNC. You can see it's got a little structure and a spindle that moves around, and right now we have a big blade on it. So I'm just going to hide that. And you can see we've got a lathe back in the back here. So the stone, which the brothers have cut into this rectangular block, it gets pinned in between these 2 points. And the lathe will actually spin it so we can carve the different parts of the stone. We remove more material by taking the blade, and basically the blade's going to be making cuts into that stone while the lathe is spinning, and so it knows how deep to cut. And basically what that leaves is all these ribs, and you can kind of see a shape appearing in between the ribs there. So the brothers will go in with a hammer later, knock off the ribs, and that'll leave like a roughed out finial, like just the general shape. And we go from bigger tools to smaller tools, kind of going bigger, rougher to finer, and just we start removing the material and getting more and more and more detail. So here you can see it's already looks pretty good, but it's really rough because it's just the main material is gone.
You can see here, this is a piece that we've been roughing out, and so this is a finial for the top of one of the pinnacles on the chapter house. And you can see the individual crockets forming out of it. And so it's about halfway done. We've probably got another 15 hours left in this piece here. The way the lathe works, you can see on this end, this is the drive end. So this is what actually turns the stone. So this end will rotate, and it's actually interpolated with the rest of the machine, so that it'll precisely position the piece as it's carving and actually carve in that detail. It'll turn it to wherever it needs to be, so it's a very nice way to constantly be moving the piece and getting the perfect angle. So this here is the interface for the CNC machine. So you can see the computer screen here. You can see all these numbers. You have each axis. So an axis is a range of motion. So an X would be left to right on the machine. Y would be front and back. Z would be up and down. And then you have A and C, which would be the rotating. So it's a 5-axis machine, so the head will actually turn and point different directions. And then we have the U-axis, which is the lathe. And so as I was saying, the lathe can actually turn and pivot and interpolate with the other axes, meaning that they will all work together to carve a piece, so they can actually move every single one at the same time in a controlled motion. So what we have, and then you have all of their coordinates. So it's just a grid system, right? Imagine a huge, I don't know, you could say a Rubik's Cube, right? And all those coordinates, all those boxes, and it can go to any single corner, any point in the entire machine. It's just like a massive 3D graph. All right, so now we're going to start up this machine and continue roughing out this piece. So the machine first turns to the appropriate angle, and you can see the lathe positions. And this tool's running at 6,000 RPM. Moving over to the starting point and going down to enter into the stone. And now it's carving away. This job will take about 2 hours.
So here we have the finished piece. So all you can see it's completely done. It's carved on all sides and all the detail is put in. So this finial will actually end up being put on top of a pinnacle and will form like the very peak of the chapter house.
You can see this piece here at the top we left on so that the lathe, remember, it pins it from both ends. So we still have this piece here on the end. So now what we'll do is we'll take this and we'll just carve this off, turn it into a nice point, and finish the piece for the top of the building. So I'll just take this pneumatic chisel here and chisel off this end. Right, so this is how that's basically how we'll hand finish our finials, other pieces where we need to do a little bit of touch up after it comes off the CNC machine. Just take a chisel to it and finish it up just like that.
So that's how we carve a finial.